training chips. A lot of people assume that the training chips are where the most money is to be made because they are the most powerful chips. But just reading your piece, which is a very good, that it's your most recent piece, I believe, that you reach a different conclusion. And I know Nebius has a different business model as well to CoreWeave. So that's parallel. Tell us about that.
Nebius obviously traces its roots from Yandex, which was part of Mail.ru and all these Russian companies. It was like the Russian Google. And then once Russia invaded Ukraine and America was forced a lot of companies to divest out of Russia, Nebius spun up and became publicly listed, and people didn't really know what was going on with the company. And now it's like the preeminent hypercloud leader, basically exclusively with NVIDIA GPUs. And going to that event, you can kind of see that not only do they give customers like bare metal, cheap servers, but they go all the way to the top with like GPUs per hour with a software layer stack in the middle to help everybody within the company to really use AI efficiently. And even you can use open source models of what they're doing. And I think one of the things that kind of stands out is obviously the software stack that allows them to extract more tokens per watt. But at the same time, because they've had so many years of experience building data centers back in the day with Yandex, they build everything from the ground up to their own specs. So the whole building and shell is their design, and all the racks and the servers is also their design also. They don't buy anything off the shelf. Everything is very custom, and the whole team just grinds in silence, and they don't really try to show off their designs, and they don't have like crazy marketing, and they just produce results. And that's why you saw, I think Microsoft gave them a $7 billion cash upfront for a build on, and then Meta's also working with them. So they're signing up some really big customers for their data centers, and they're expanding all across the world. They just announced in France and London, and I think they're going to be doing more sites in the United States. And they're basically married to NVIDIA. The next generation of chips, Vera Rubin with the CPU for agentic workflows, will definitely work on their stack. So I think that's really what's interesting about them. They're like all in, and they have the technical know-how and chops to really execute it at scale.
And Ben, how does that compare to CoreWeave? Because the CoreWeave people and the people who love CoreWeave, including semi-analysis, they say CoreWeave is the darling of NVIDIA, and CoreWeave has the software to make the hyperscalers and the AI purchasers happy. So what's the difference here?
I think part of the challenge with CoreWeave is they're heavily debt laden. So they have a lot of debt on the books, and Nebius tries to roll with equity with shorter term contracts versus longer term contracts.
Screen on, please. Yeah, go ahead.
And the idea is to make it up on volume. And you, over time, and this is just my prediction, you've had a huge influx of guys that were obviously crypto miners that have pivoted to HPC compute, and it's just not the same as just plugging in GPUs into the grid. There's many factors that go into it, and obviously the software layer is part of it, and delivering tokens at scale, reliably, at the right price. And I think having all those things together makes companies like Nebius or possibly even CoreWeave stand out, where you're going to have a lot of these companies that have come out of the woods to become HPC providers. They won't last when the margin compression comes, and you'll see a huge move of consolidation in the industry at that point.
Okay, so what people can see now is, you pointed this out, that CoreWeave, as many people know, including the bears, is incredibly indebted, and they borrow a ton of money to make the banks and the lenders happy. And I've spoken to some of the lenders. They enter these very long-term contracts with OpenAI and other labs, but because of that, they actually don't have the pricing power. And if you have a huge spike up in GPU prices, as we've had, what I learned from your piece is that Nebius, which operates more in the spot market, is more of the beneficiary there. Okay, and so it sounds like you actually like Nebius and maybe to some degree CoreWeave more than the pure just Bitcoin miners that all they have is land and access to electricity. That's interesting. Screen down, Max.
Yeah, my question was about the Bitcoin miners. The thesis has largely been that there's so much demand that it's spilling over, and in these types of shortages. It's oftentimes the worst, the highest cost producers, the people who have the worst balance sheet that benefit because the marginal increase in price, they just have so much leverage to the spot price. I think nobody is under the illusion that these are great companies that are going to be the leaders moving forward. But the question is, when is that going to end? Are the Nebiuses of the world, the CoreWeaves, everybody else, are they bringing enough supply online that eventually the Bitcoin miners are not going to be competitive?